Okay, so we're going to now look at the derivative of the inverse function. I'm sorry, not derivative of the inverse function, but derivative of the inverse of a function. Okay, so can you go down to this diagram here, and I'd like to highlight some things and then go back and look at some of the description. So let's just recall what is an inverse. So here is my original function, which is my f.
No, that's what
So here is my f. And let's suppose that I'm going to choose a certain point. So here is my point right here. And let's just suppose that that point is an a comma b. So you have a x value that's a and the y value that's b. And if I wanted to find the slope at that particular point, what I'll be doing is finding whatever the derivative is. So that'll be f prime. And then my slope is going to equal whatever my derivative is, and then I'll stick in a. Right? So that's something that we've been doing ever since we looked at slopes. So this is a slope at a particular point. Now we're going to look at what inverse would do to the graph. So recall that inverse means your x becomes the y and the y becomes the x. And so it'll look something like this. And then you also have a reflection line across the line here, which is your y is equal to x. So that's the line of reflection. And so now on the actual point, what used to be a AB will be a what? BA. So this will be a BA. And now I'll look at what the graph is. So in general, when you're looking at this, I'm going to say that this is not exactly, but it's approximately, when you figure out what slope is, it is change in y over the change in x. Right? So this is pretty much the slope of the secant line, but it's very, very close to the slope of the tangent line. So you're taking the change of y over the change in x. Now, when you calculate the slope of this, we'll call this as f inverse here. And I'm just going to state that that's a g graph. Okay, so just write down that f inverse is equal to g. So when I calculate my slope on this one is going to be, instead of change in y over the change in x, it'll be what? Yeah, so that's going to get swapped around. So it's going to be change in x over the change in y. And then I'll say it's approximately the same thing as taking the g function, take the derivative. Now this is where you have to be careful with your numbers or letters. So since your a and your b got swapped around, you don't want to say g prime of a. You want to say g prime of what? B. Okay, so this has to be a b right here. And so the relationship between the original slope and the inverse, look at these two. Change in y over the change in x becomes a change in x over the change in y. What do we call that? When you swap, reciprocal, exactly. Okay, so that is what a reciprocal is, and that is the conclusion that is stated here. If f prime of a is equal to b, or m, if f prime of a is equal to m, then if you find the inverse point, which is going to be g prime of b, that's going to equal the reciprocal. All right, you can go back and read over all the stuff up here, but I've set it all on this graph. So this is the main part right here. If you find the derivative at a certain point, the derivative of the inverse at the y value of that point is the reciprocal. That's what this is. Okay, so let's do a few examples that go with this. So in order to help you organize all your data, I'm going to have you guys make a template like this. So draw a template like this. And we're going to start in like the fourth quadrant. Okay, so right here, you've got this if f of 7 is equal to 1 and f prime of 7 is equal to 5, and g is the inverse of f. So this part is very important. You have to be given this, or else all the stuff I'm talking about above won't apply at all. Then what is g prime of 1? So whatever it is that is the question, I'm going to put in this fourth quadrant. Okay, so I'm going to write out what is g prime of 1? And then I'm going to start filling out this template. Okay, so here's the template. So if g prime of 1 is equal to something, that came from g of 1 equaling something. Okay, so right above in the first quadrant, just put g of 1. Now, if f and g are inverses of each other, that means that this x was the original y. So it'll be f of something is equal to 1. Okay, so see how this number here has to match up with the opposite or the y value on that. Okay, and then you're going to take the derivative of this, which is f prime of something, and then you're going to get some answer right here. And then whatever answer you get on f prime of that number, it's going to be the reciprocal right here. Okay, so notice I just did the template by looking at this. Now I'm going to fill in all of the parts with this portion right here. Okay, so f of what is equal to 1? 7. Okay, so I'm going to fill that in with a 7. And so then f prime of 7 has to equal 5. All right, so that part is given to us. So since we know that f and g are inverses of each other, that means their derivatives are reciprocals. So if this is 5, what does this have to be?
1 over 5.
Yes, 1/5. So that's the answer. So this is g prime of 1 is equal to 1/5. So that would be your answer. For this particular problem, we don't really need this answer. I mean, if you wanted to fill it in, and we could fill it in. What is that? 7. But it doesn't matter.
Why is it 7?
What?
Well, because the x becomes the y and the y becomes the x on these two. Right. So on the point, the x and y's get swapped around. On the derivatives, it becomes the reciprocal.
Is that just
The G is just the
Yes.
inverse.
when it says inverse?
Mm-hmm.
It means that you have to take the reciprocal of the.
Yes, exactly. You find that derivative, and then, but you need to make sure that this number is usually is not the same as this number. You have to choose the y value on this becomes the x value here. And then this x is going to become the x here, and then figure this out. So in this case, it was just given to you here. Okay, let's see another example. So for our next one, you're given this, and then f and g are inverses, and then the final thing is this. So you want to always focus on this final question here to start off your template. All right, so I start off my template. I want to know what is g prime of 5. Okay, so what do I write above? G of 5. Okay, equals something. Now I'm going to go to the original. So this is the inverse. So what would the original function be? It would be f of something is equal to 5. Okay, and then you need to find what is f prime of something is equal to something. All right, so what is, now you need to look at your other information. F of what is equal to 5? Negative 2. Okay, and then you write f prime of a negative 2, and that is equal to 6. And so these two are going to be reciprocals of each other. So then this answer will be a 1/6.
So g of 5 is 8.
So g prime of 5 is equal to a 1/6. Now, there is one information that's trying to throw you guys off, which is this right here. This right here is to try to trick you.
We won't do that on the test.
Yeah.
will you?
I will try to trick you also.
Maybe not.
So they want to see if you're going to use this, and you could see that somebody could use it because they may just say, oh, g of 5, so f prime of 5, and then use negative 3 as the answer on that. Okay, yes.
So g of 5 is negative 2.
So g of 5 is negative 2. Yep, exactly. Okay, so these are just kind of listed, and now let's go on to the next page. And sometimes it'll give it to you in this nice chart. Okay, so let's look at it in a chart way. Chart way is better because it's all organized already. So you're given f, and then you're told that g and f are inverses. So you want to find g prime of 4 and g prime of -1. So you need to draw out 2 templates for this. So we'll start you off and then have you finish it. So in one of them, you would like to find g prime of 4. And the other one, you want to find what is g prime of a -1. Okay, so fill in this template and you guys go ahead and try it. And I'm going to give you. Okay, go ahead. Can you fill in this table?
Anything last? That table?
Yes, this one.
So top right is g of 4 equal to -3x. And then f of -3 is equal to 4. And then f prime of -3 is equal to 1/4. And then g prime of 4 is equal to 4.
Good. So that's your answer right here. Very good. Okay. All right, next person. Somebody else? Okay. All right. How about the other smart guy next to you? Matthew.
G of -1.
Uh-huh.
And f of 2 is equal to -1.
Uh-huh.
And f prime of 2 is equal to -2 over 3.
Okay.
So g prime of -1 is equal to -2 over 2.
Yes. And remember, it's not the negative reciprocal, it's just the reciprocal, not negative. Okay, very good. All right, so in the next problem, it's slightly different because a function is given to you. So it says you've got f of x is equal to the square root of x, and let g be the inverse function, and you want to evaluate g prime of 3. So with just given g prime of 3, I'll set up my template initially, and I want to find g prime of 3 at the very end. So now I fill it in, so this will be a g of 3. And then this one's going to be f of something is equal to 3. And this is f prime of something is equal to something. All right, so now in this one I don't have a chart. I don't have any other information except for this. So how am I going to get this number? Oh, you just know it's 9 just by looking at it? Yeah. So I take my f of x is equal to the square root of x. And since this is the y value, I just set it equal to 3. And so then from there I could just square both sides. So that gives me x is equal to 9. Right? So then the missing part on that is going to be 9 here. And now I can start filling in other things. Put 9 here. I don't really need it, but I could put 9 there. And now I need to calculate f prime of 9. How do you get f prime of 9? Yep, so I need to find f prime of x first. So f prime of x is 1/2 x to the -1/2, which is the same thing as 1/2 square root of x. Now I'm going to put in 9. So what is f prime of 9? That's going to be 1/2 times the square root of 9, which is 1/6. Yep. So 1/6 is my derivative here, 1/6. So now I can fill in, what is g prime of 3? 6. Yep, 6 would be the answer there. Okay, final question. For the last question, we're going to be finding, you're given all this information here, and you're told that g is the inverse of f, and they're asking, what is the equation of the tangent line to g of x? Now, since we're dealing with two functions, you have to be careful whether you're answering to f of x or g of x. So they want g of x. So our general formula would be y minus y1 is equal to m quantity x minus x1. Okay, so I need to now fill in each of these parts here. I need to know what this is, I need to know what this is, and I need to know what this is. All right, do I know any of these?
X.
X. What is x? Yep, so right here is going to be a -3. All right, how about y? Yeah, I can get it, and this would be, can you represent what this would be? Like something of something?
F of it.
Is it going to be f or g of what?
-3.
-3. Good. Right, so this is going to be a g of negative 3, and then give me a representation for my m. G prime of a negative 3. So g prime of negative 3 is what I'm going to start off with in my chart. So in my chart, I'll have g prime of a negative 3 is what I want to find. And then right above it, I'll have a g of negative 3. And then I'll have f of something is equal to a negative 3. And then f prime of something is equal to something. Okay, so now let's go through and fill this in. So what is, well, I don't have anything for g of negative 3, but I do know that this is negative 3. So what is this going to be? 2. So this will be a 2 right here. And then what is f prime of 2? 3/4. 3/4. And so what is g prime of a negative 3? 4/3. Now, in this one, I actually need this. I have to have this. Oh no, my pen's running out. Okay. I'm working too hard, that's what that means. Alright, so this will have to be a 2. Good. So now I think we're ready to write it. So it'll be a y, and I'm using this as my y1 minus 2, and that is equal to, my slope is 4/3 quantity x plus 3. The end.